Hey everyone, thank you so much for joining another masterclass. I'm excited as hell because I have one of our newest experts at the Board of Experts of the Worldwide Immigrants Association. We have Murlene Joseph. She's the owner and founder of Mere Wellness. She's a certified health and wellness coach, and I'm extremely happy that she's with us today because she's going to teach us how to get our health back after migrating to another country. So thank you so much, Murlene, for being with us.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to be here. And I want to just help in any way that I can. So,
Thank
yay.
you. I know that you will, because when we started discussing about this collaboration, I was just fascinated about how practical you make things for us to take care of ourselves and how easy it sounds. So I can't wait for us to start. So before we start with this masterclass, I just want to go through a little explanation about why are we going to talk about this. And the fact is, I explained to you that when we move into another country, we start by not knowing where to buy stuff, not knowing what's the food, the local food, if there are veggies or fruits that were in our countries. And we also start being very conscious about saving money. And in these cases, we end up eating, I don't know, burgers at McDonald's in the worst case scenario, or tuna fish from the can in the best scenario. So this cannot continue, and of course, after a while, we start struggling with our health, with our body. We lack of energy. We don't feel as good as we should. So that's why I need you to enlighten us on this and tell us, how do we do it? How can we make it?
Okay, so that is it's a conversation that I was so happy to have with you because I never really pictured health and wellness from that perspective. So I was born in Florida, and both my parents are Haitian. They came to the United States before I was even born, but we moved to Haiti for 2 years and had to assimilate to that culture. So I actually had the opposite immigration story as most people. So I was born in the United States, but I had to live and assimilate to the Haitian culture, which I wasn't quite used to. So after living in the United States for about 8 years, which was all of my life at the time, we moved to Haiti, where the language was completely different. I wasn't accustomed to speaking it, although I was accustomed to hearing it, because as my parents were trying to learn English, we spoke English to them and they spoke Creole to us. So when we went to Haiti, I wasn't allowed to speak English because they wanted us to speak their language. So although we went to an American school, um, with my elders, I had to speak the language that I wasn't too familiar with, and we had to eat food that we weren't familiar with. And um, we were always eating American food, burgers, things like that. And now it was this weird food. We didn't know what it was, but we were told to eat it. In Haiti, you don't really have an option. They cook what they have access to. And if you don't eat, then you just don't eat. Um, so it took a lot of getting used to. And over time, I actually lost a lot of weight. When my mom came to visit us for the first time, she was back in the United States, I had lost a lot of weight because I was a picky eater. And so if I didn't know what something was or it didn't smell good, I was the type of kid who would eat with their eyes. If it didn't look good to me, then I didn't eat it. And so eventually we had to make arrangements to kind of pick and choose what we ate. So it was lots of rice and beans and beef and things like that. So that's pretty much what I eventually, after about a year, halfway through, I got used to the food, got used to the language, but it took some time and I had to change my habits. And so that's what we're going to talk about today. We're going to talk about learning to change your habits when you're assimilating to a different culture, a different environment, and a different lifestyle. So the ultimate goal, usually when you are migrating to a new country or a new place, is to have balance your healthy habits. What your old habits were in your country or where you were used to living, and assimilating to new habits. So we want to be able to balance our health and well-being. So when your environment, your circumstances, and your surrounding culture changes, so does your habits and your health. Slowly over time, your habits are essentially a sum, or your health is essentially a sum of your habits. So let's say, for example, you're used to eating a Mediterranean diet back at home, which is fish and vegetables, and you come to a new environment where the vegetables are really expensive, the fish is hard to come by. What do you eat? You know, so you tend to eat what's surrounding you. So if you have a Subway, a Burger King, you know, a pizza place down the street, eventually that's where you're going to go to, because you're going for the convenience foods. You're at a new job, you're working long hours, you know, your kids are now eating school food that they're not used to eating. Eventually, what happens? The weight starts to be put on, you're not sleeping well. And so all of those little changes over time start to add up. And so your kids are also something to consider, because not only are they in a new environment at home, but they're also in a new environment at school. And in our culture nowadays, bullying is a big thing, especially with everything being heard about immigrants and things like that, the miscommunication about immigration, that is something that you want to keep an eye out. It's not a physical health component, but it is a huge mental health component. And that is a big, big aspect when it comes to your health, emotional health, mental health. All of those are part of the circle of life when it comes to your health and well-being. So that's one thing. You have to look at how your new habits affect you and your family members. So we're going to talk about some habits that you can implement, and I definitely suggest that you pick one or two to implement now, and then slowly over time, as you master those two, you can add more habits along the way. Okay, so for example, I wanted to talk about a little bit of research that I started doing when this opportunity came across me. And I was really surprised at some of the research articles that I read. And studies show that the longer an immigrant stays in America, the less healthy they become, which is kind of counterintuitive, because we usually think of assimilation as a really good thing. And this makes sense when you're talking about education and income, but it's not necessarily true about health. So for instance, the grass isn't always greener or healthier on the other side. And this may not always be the case depending on where you're migrating from and to. So the question that you really want to ask yourself is, how do you adapt to a new culture without mirroring the bad habits that may be associated with that new culture? So like I mentioned, if you are migrating to the United States and you're used to a Mediterranean diet that includes lots of fish and vegetables, but as soon as you move into the United States, you notice that your eating habits begin to change. For example, you start eating a lot more processed foods and a lot more meat, red meats. So if you don't ever realize or become aware of these changes, it slowly starts to affect your health, not only you, but your children and other family members that you're living with. So, one thing that I would suggest is limit the amount of days that you're eating out. When you tend to cook more at home, you tend to, one, eat leaner meats, and you tend to make healthier meals. If you take the same, let's say for instance, you go to Outback and you take the same ribeye with sweet potatoes versus a ribeye and sweet potatoes that you cook at home,
Mm.
even though they are essentially the same meal, the one that you eat at the restaurant is going to be fattier, greasier, and is going to have more calories because of, one, the preservatives that you don't know where the meat is coming from, you don't know what oils they're using, and compared to what you're using at home, you can see and you know exactly what ingredients are going into your foods. So that's one of the big differences. And that's one of the biggest changes that you can make is eating more home cooked meals. And the second biggest thing is getting more exercise. If you're used to being in an environment or a city that allows more walking, and now you're in an urban area where it's more driving, you can't really walk, so you're now all of a sudden getting less activity.
Mhm.
So the big suggestion that I would do is use that time instead of sitting down after work and watching TV after dinner or anything like that. Take some time and go on a walk with your family. If you have pets, walk your pets and use that time as bonding time with your family. So you're still spending time with your family. You guys just aren't sitting in front of a tube watching television. Instead, you're moving, you're having fun, and you're still bonding with each other. So those are the two biggest things that I would suggest that you start to slowly implement. And if you're looking for something to implement right now, as soon as you hear you're done watching this video, something that you can do within the next 24 hours, my biggest suggestion is getting 8 hours of sleep. I implemented this in my life, and it has been the biggest game changer. It's given me so much more energy to do the things that I want to do. Even though I'm sleeping more, I feel like I have more time during the day to do the things that I really enjoy doing and the things that I have to get done throughout my day. So if you know you have to be up at a certain time, I would count back 8 hours, and that is your bedtime. Give yourself sufficient time to get ready for bed, put the kids to sleep, do what you have to do so that you can get to bed on time. And usually it takes about 10 to 20 minutes to fall asleep. If that's taking you a little longer to fall asleep, then you might want to look into some easy supplements, natural supplements that will help you sleep until your body gets used to going to bed at a certain time. And after that, your body will tell you when it's ready to go to sleep, and it will be so easy. You're supposed to be tired at the end of the day. Listen to your body. Don't force yourself to stay awake longer than you need to. If your body is not resting, your immune system isn't functioning the way that it's supposed to. And especially during the time that we're in right now, you need to make sure that your immune system is working at its optimum level. So definitely make sure you're sleeping really well. The next suggestion that I would have is making sure you're drinking lots and lots of water. It's very easy to forget to drink water sometimes, especially if you're just too busy, especially if you're the type of person to forget to eat, which I can definitely understand how that can happen because I used to be that person. Even if you have to use your cell phone to remind you to drink water, set a little reminder every hour to drink a little bit of water. Always have something nearby so that you can visually see, oh, I haven't touched this in the last hour. Let me take a couple of sips. If you're going 3 or 4 hours without using the bathroom, that's a sign that you're not hydrated enough and you need to drink more water. I would definitely suggest 4 16-ounce bottles or 64 ounces minimum for any person to drink in a 24-hour period. How's that?
That's amazing. And now I'm getting a lot of questions right now. And starting with that information that you told us about people who are moving into America that are getting instead of better health, a lack of health.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, like, of course, I get it that sometimes it's easier to go to McDo or to go to Subway and grab a little bite
Yeah.
somewhere than actually cooking. And sometimes, as I was telling you before, you were touching base on the Mediterranean food, and I'm actually from Mexico, and a lot of immigrants who are coming from very fertile countries. Of
Mm-hmm.
course, we find a lack of vegetables and fruits, and then of course we find them there in the supermarket, but we feel like it's extremely expensive,
Expensive,
so we
yeah.
rather not to buy them and go for the potatoes all the time, let's say.
Mm-hmm.
So that's where the imbalance starts. But I was
Yes.
thinking also, I'm not a parent, but there are many parents who move into another country, as you were saying, and they are not providing themselves the right diet or
Mm-hmm.
the right nutrition because they are prioritizing the diet of their kids.
Yes.
So I don't know, like in that case, of course, there should be a balance for everybody. Of course, if there is not the big one, the responsible
Yeah.
one who's going to take care of the kids, what's the sense of eating a McDo yourself and giving vegetables to your kids, right? But how do we get to balance it at the beginning where when everything seems so complicated? How can we make it like little by little more possible? And
So
after
what
that,
I would definitely suggest is, and I understand vegetables can be very, very expensive, especially fresh organic fruits and vegetables. I would start by buying frozen vegetables that all you have to do is steamed. Those tend to be a lot cheaper than the fresh organic vegetables. Or instead of going to the supermarket to get your fruits and veggies, go to your local co-op or like weekend farmers market where there are places where you can just go and pick your own vegetables and you pay for the weight or anything like that. It's usually a lot cheaper. Of course, you have to wake up early on Saturday on the weekends, but it's also a really great time to bond with your family. Make it an adventure. Make it, have the kids pick out their favorite vegetables, have them help you in cooking so that they can see what healthy eating and healthy habits start like when they have to invest their own time in cooking their own food and prepping and seeing what this new healthy lifestyle looks like. They'll be more invested in it as well. And the more time they get to spend with you, the happier they'll be. So it's kind of like bonding time, especially if you're starting with kids at a really young age. They love to help in the kitchen. So this is just a great opportunity. It's another bonding or a family activity that you guys can do together rather than, like I said, sitting in front of the TV or allowing them to sit down and play video games. If you get them more involved in the food that they're eating, have them assist in making those decisions. What kind of vegetables do you guys want to eat today? Even if it's the same vegetable every day, as long as they're getting in those greens. Making smoothies is a really nice way of, adding more vegetables in during the day. Instead of giving your kids sugary cereals in the morning, have them pick a smoothie. On the weekend, you guys can meal prep little smoothie packs and Ziploc bags that you can reuse over again. The kids get to pick their vegetables, their fruit that they want. And if you like have them wake up in the morning and say, okay, kids, come blend your smoothie, that is, they love that. Kids for some reason love blenders. So so doing those fun activities, having them assist and have a hand in those, that those are healthy habits that even though it's fun for them, it's still very healthy and it's something that the family can do together. And smoothies are very, very inexpensive. So those are just little ways. If you can't get fresh organic fruits and vegetables, definitely go for the frozen vegetables. Those work just as well. And if you could do half and half, that's just fine. And if you eat out a couple times a week, that's just as fine. But eventually over time, you realize if you compare, if you are somebody who eats out 5 days a week, compare that for a family of four. It's way less expensive to cook for a family of four than to buy takeout or go out to a restaurant to eat for a family of four. And if it's a time constraint situation, you could definitely cook twice a week. Meal prep for on Sunday evening or Sunday day for Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Wednesday night you meal prep for the rest of the week. That way everything stays fresh. You only have to cook twice a week, and that gives you a lot more time, less time in the kitchen and more time with your family or doing other things that you need to do. So
those are great tips. I never thought on those. And yeah, you're right. Like sometimes it's just the misconception that we have that, oh my God, it's extremely expensive. Like
yeah,
myself, for example, I would never buy a mango here. Like I feel like I'm cheating on my country, hardly.
yeah. And
So
it's never good though. I've been to other countries and even Haiti, the mangoes here are just never quite as good unless you're picking it off of the tree yourself. It's just not quite as good. But there are fruits and vegetables that are good. And if you eat the fruits and vegetables that are in season, one, it gives you a variety of fruits and vegetables. And usually when they're in season, they're a lot cheaper. So that is also one, a really good tip to do. Stick to the fruits and vegetables that are in season in your area, especially. And
exactly. That's
yeah,
another thing, that we have to study our environment, the new environment. And that's what I didn't do when I arrived here. I thought I was not going to be able to eat as I was eating
yeah,
before. And it was just because of this fear of, or either it's expensive or the fruits and vegetables don't have the same taste,
yeah.
or it's kind of the resistance that we all have in changes like this. But
Hmm.
when you start studying the surroundings and the environment and where you're located geographically, then
Yes.
you figure out that, well, there are other vegetables that you never tried that
Mhm.
now you can actually start tasting and you will like them. So yeah, I love also the suggestion about the frozen vegetables, because we also have this misconception that they lose their like the substance, the
Yeah,
nutritious
the
substance.
nutrition, yeah. And you know, and that may be true in some cases, but it's still better than processed foods. So if you had to choose the lesser of the evil, I would definitely say go for the frozen fruits or vegetables. And if you absolutely, absolutely have to get any fruits or vegetables out of the can, make sure that they don't have any concentrated juice, make sure they're organic, even if it is in the can, and make sure you're rinsing it really well, because most canned vegetables have lots and lots of salt, and that comes with the whole issue of its own. And another thing is you have to be very aware of the way that food is grown and manufactured where you are. Because one experience of mine is I am very gluten intolerant. So I took a trip to Italy last year. And of course, Italy has all the pasta and all the bread. And I just absolutely could not resist. So I just invited all the gluten, all the gluten into my diet. And of course, I was expecting to have the reactions that I normally have: the puffy face, the swelling hands, the indigestion, all of the issues that gluten comes with. But to my surprise, I had no symptoms whatsoever. And it was because the way that they grow their flour and all of their grains is completely different than the way that the grains and flours are manufactured in the United States. So if you are immigrating from Italy to the United States, you may not be able to eat all of the bread and the pasta here that you would normally be able to, because it's made and grown differently. So you have to be very, very aware that you may not be sensitive to a certain food back in your own country, but here you may be sensitive to it because, unfortunately, things are grown and manufactured differently. So those are things that you have to be aware of. And unfortunately, you won't know if this is an issue for you until you experience it.
Exactly.
So you have to be very careful and just learn to be very aware of your body. Listen to your body. Don't ignore any signs. If you notice that something is off, pay attention to what you're eating, what you're doing. Um, Pay attention to your environment. What could be causing some of the issues that you're having. And one other thing that I wanted to point out is that you always make plans whenever you're changing your surroundings. You make plans for where you're going to work. You make plans for where you're going to live, what school your kids are going to go to, how things are going to function. But no one ever makes plans for what their habits are going to look like. So
Yes.
those are definitely something that you have to consider. Okay, who's going to cook? Who's going to clean? How are we going to get in our exercise? You have to think about how, just like your environment is changing, the culture is changing, how are the habits going to change? And what can I do um, to prevent picking up bad habits, or to prevent your kids from picking up bad habits? Because you're not with your kids all the time. And so your kids are now being exposed to new things, not only in your home, but in their school, wherever they are after school, the kids that they're around, what new habits are they going to pick up? And what can I do to prevent those bad habits? What can I do to prevent them from picking up those bad habits? And there are certain things that obviously is not within our control, but it's just keeping an eye out and being aware of some of those changes. Are your kids being bullied at school? Now bullying is a huge thing that kids are going through now. I remember being bullied, but our kids now are very sensitive, and there are kids that are just very, very mean. So how are you going to handle that situation with your kid? To prevent them from being another statistic. So these are all things that you have to consider. It's a lot, but not everything is going to affect everybody in the same way. So you have to pick and choose what it is that you're going to focus on, based on what your life and your habits are, and also where your new environment and your new culture is going to be. Every place is different. So if you feel like, let's say if you're migrating from Mexico to the United States, if you feel like you're being active and you're eating healthy now, how is all of that going to change when you come to the United States, knowing that the longer an immigrant stays in the United States, the more unhealthier they are. Our habits in the United States, our healthy habits, aren't all that healthy, and not everybody is so health conscious. So how are you going to maintain those good habits without picking up bad ones?
I believe it's just a learning curve, because I don't believe this is exclusively for the United States, actually.
No, not at all. The United States aren't, I'm just using the United States as
No.
example because that's where I'm at. But anywhere you go, there are going to be certain habits that you just don't want to pick up. There are going to be, maybe you have some bad habits that you want to leave behind and you want to pick up some new habits. Everyone's going to be different. So you just kind of have to make a plan. You know, how am I going to get my exercise in? How am I going to eat healthier? Am I going to cook every night? Am I going to meal plan? Are we going to take turns cooking? If you have to eat out, what are some healthy restaurants that I can go to? So there are lots of options. Some people still manage to eat very healthy and stay healthy without ever having to cook. So how are you going to do that? It's all about finding what works for you and sticking to that, because everybody's lifestyle is different. Some people absolutely hate cooking. So what are you going to do to maintain a healthy lifestyle without having to cook? So there are lots of options. There are lots of healthy restaurants. You just don't want to go just with what's convenient, because just because it's convenient doesn't necessarily mean it's healthy.
Yeah. Yeah, you're
So,
totally right. And well, I had another question about the sleep because you mentioned that, and I was like, oh my God, you're so right. And again, when we like change our environment and we are like all overwhelmed with this new life, what we
mhm,
do the least is sleeping correctly. 8 hours. I believe I haven't slept 8 hours since I arrived here. Honestly, I sometimes wake up at 4 a.m. in the morning after being asleep at, I don't know, 9:30 on winter because I really feel asleep.
yeah.
But it's not enough time. So I wake up and then I feel extremely tired the rest of the day. So again, what you're talking about is to adopt and to create good habits for us to
Mhm.
be able to up level
Our health.
our health. Thank you. So how do we do it? How do we adopt another habit for sleeping?
So, my suggestion for adopting any habit is to do one at a time. Focus on one thing and don't try to do everything all at the same time, or else it's going to be very overwhelming and you're just going to end up doing nothing. So pick the thing that is most important to you right now and just focus on that. Do that for a period of time, 2 weeks to 30 days, and just make it to where it fits perfectly within your lifestyle. Maybe you feel like you don't need 8 hours. Maybe you feel like you do better on 7 hours. Okay, so let's make sure you're sleeping 7 hours a day. So my suggestion would be, if you're somebody who's used to sleeping maybe 5 hours every night and you can never sleep more than that, I would start by adding an hour of sleep to your regimen every night. So if you're used to sleeping 5, tonight try to get 6 hours of sleep, and do that until it feels natural to you. Sleeping 6 hours and you feel okay with that. And you can sleep the 6 hours straight, because you don't want broken sleep. You want to be able to sleep for the entire 6 hour time period, because some people it's really hard to get back to sleep, especially if you're getting up, going to the bathroom, and then coming back and you're stuck awake. So, and one thing I would suggest is staying off of any device or staying away from the television at least 1 to 2 hours before you go to sleep. Because I will tell you, I can sleep 8 hours straight, but the second I pick up my phone before I go to bed, I won't put it down. And before you know it, I've been up for 3 hours and I've just lost 3 hours of sleep because I still have to wake up at the same time regardless. So stay away from your phone and make sure you are eating a certain amount of time before you go to bed. For me, it's at least an hour and a half to 2 hours before I go to bed. If I eat sooner than that, then I can't really sleep on a full stomach like that. And make sure that you're using your bedroom just for sleep or other stuff, but just sleep. just for sleep and intimacy stuff, but make sure that your bedroom isn't like the game room or the room that the dogs hang out in, or it's not your office at the same time. You want to make it a relaxing environment. And also, I would create a nighttime routine. What are some of the things that you're always doing right before bed? Are you taking a shower, brushing your teeth, getting the kids ready? Create a routine around that and figure out how long does it take me to do this routine. I've created lots of videos about that. Actually, I just released one, but creating a nighttime routine for yourself. I like to put my phone on do not disturb at 8 o'clock. And I start my nighttime routine then, and I go to bed by 9:30 so that I can wake up to do the things that I want to do. And if you would like to give yourself an hour of just me time before the whole house wakes up, then schedule that into your day, making sure that when you're waking up at 6 o'clock to have an hour of me time from 6 to 7, that you're still getting in your 8 hours of sleep. So I would suggest slowly adding in an hour. So if you're doing an hour each week, that would take you 3 weeks to get up to your 8 hours. But your body eventually will get used to sleeping 8 hours. It will love it. And eventually, sleeping 8 hours will be the perfect amount of time for you. You're probably not used to sleeping 8 hours. So, therefore, you feel like 5 hours is perfect for you. But you don't know what sleeping for 8 hours every day feels like until you get there. And it's the most amazing thing. You feel rested. You're jumping out of bed when your alarm clock goes off. Like, I am always up at least 5 minutes before my alarm clock goes off, and I just sit there and wait for it to go off. So it's a really good feeling. You just have to allow yourself to get to that uncomfortable phase of doing something you're not used to doing in order to get to where you want to be. So when you're creating a goal for habits that you want to instill in your lifestyle, you have to ask yourself, where am I currently at and where do I want to be? And how am I going to fill in that gap? What are the little steps that I'm going to take to get to my ideal situation? So Diana will provide you the worksheet that I created, which is just a 3-step goal process. You create 3 goals for yourself, and then you can add in the steps that you would like to implement into your routine. And there's even a space for note taking, and you can actually think about, okay, worst case scenario, what are going to be the barriers that I'm going to reach? Is it that my kids don't go to sleep early enough? Okay, so how do you make this habit work for both you and your kids? It's understandable if your kids are used to going to bed late because that's usually what you guys do. How are we going to make this a family habit lifestyle change that everyone participates in, and so therefore everyone benefits from it? So those are things that you have to decide, because of course it is your life. So you have to figure out what's going to work for you and what's going to be realistic for you so that you can sustain these lifestyle changes over time. It's not something that's just, let's do this until we reach to this point. You want to make it something that you're going to be able to do every single day without it feeling like a hassle or a chore to you.
Oh my God. I believe we all like all the things in steps that you just told us about. They sound extremely easy, but at the same time, the last phase, the implementation, is where
Yeah.
we get stuck in that moment, and when we feel like, oh my God, yeah, what you're telling us right now, to go and try 1 hour and another one when we want to sleep, and then we need to exercise, we need to find out the best foods, and then of course we have to take care of our kids and blah blah. So it starts feeling like a
It
big
starts to
responsibility.
feel overwhelming and impossible. And that's exactly why I say focus on one thing now. If you feel like you are just so tired all the time that you can't even think straight, then maybe you do need more sleep. Or maybe you're not eating enough healthy foods and that's why you're so tired. So figure out what is the biggest issue for you right now, And I would go ahead and create a priority list. What are the things that you want to change? And what's the most important? Put the very most important thing at the top, and then slowly work your way down to the least important. And give yourself all the time that you need to implement it. It's not a race as to who can get to 8 hours faster. It's just about making it work specifically for you in your lifestyle, because that's really what matters. It doesn't matter if I can sleep 8 hours, because I can't sleep for you. You have to be able to implement this with your lifestyle. It's going to be different for somebody who doesn't have kids than it is for someone who does have kids, because for me, I don't have to worry about anybody else but myself. But if you have two little kids running around, you have to also, you can't just go to bed and leave your kids up at night. So you have to figure out how these new habit changes are going to affect your family, and how you can have your family join in and participate, because you're not the only person that can function on 8 hours of sleep better. Your family can also benefit from that as well. So it's always helpful to just focus on one task or one change at a time, so that you don't feel overwhelmed, because that's not the only thing you're worried about. You're also concerned with everything else that you have to do during the day. So it's like, who has time to focus on all these lifestyle changes when I can barely function at work? So, one thing at a time. It's not a race. If it takes you 2 months to do, then that's fine. As long as you're working and you're progressing towards it, that's really all that matters.
I love that. That last advice from you, it's lifting that big heavy rock off our shoulders, because we all want to do everything at the same time. We all want to be like responsible and strong and empowered, and and that is not possible. I like that you're telling us to take it easy and to take as long as we need to take,
Yeah.
but to do it instead of making us implement everything at the same time, which maybe that's going to make us fail in
Hmm.
that situation.
Yeah.
So
I would just start with making a plan. Start with that, and then figure out how you're going to implement that plan. If you want to give yourself sufficient time, give yourself 3 months. If you feel like, oh, sleeping 8 hours is easy, so it is easy. You just have to make a point to do it. If it means setting a bedtime alarm an hour before you have to be in bed, then that's fine. I The way I started is I used lots of apps. I used lots of alarms to remind me, okay, Murlene, it's time to go to bed. It's time to brush your teeth. It's time to get in bed. And you don't want to get in bed when you're supposed to be asleep. You want to get in bed at least 20 to 30 minutes before you would like to fall asleep. And make sure you don't have distractions. And that's why I put my phone on do not disturb, so that I don't get any social media alerts. When it is important to you, you find a way to make it work. And that's what you have to decide. How important is it, and how badly do I want it? When you want it bad enough, we always find a way. So that's definitely the best advice. Decide how badly you want it and what you're willing to do for it. So,
yeah, I love that. I love that. And you're so right. When we are really committed to something, we always find the time, we always find the space, we always find the way.
yeah,
And if we feel like we are stuck, that's why Murlene is doing what she's doing, because it's never easy for everybody. And each case it has its own complications.
hmm,
So if you feel like you need someone in your team, then there's Murlene who can help you out with that. And for instance, all the advice and tips that you just gave us has been really useful to all of us. If you need to come and watch this masterclass again and again, please do it, because I know that this is going to actually make yourself more responsible and empowered to start doing that little step that she was telling us about um, today, tomorrow, I don't know, whenever is the time for you. So thank you so much, Murlene, for this amazing masterclass. I hope you enjoyed being here, and welcome to the family of the Worldwide Immigrants Association. I can't wait to see what else we're going to create for everybody. And I don't know, do you have anything else? Do you want to add something else?
No, I just want to say, if you guys really want something, do not get in your own way. We tend to get in our ways when we have goals because we feel like either it's too hard or we don't have the time. But you really do. You just have to give yourself the space and allow yourself the time. If you need help with accountability, if you need support, find somebody who's going to be there for you so that you can reach your goals, because really the only thing that's in your way is yourself. Everybody has obstacles and there are solutions for those obstacles. You just have to find that solution that fits you best.
Yes, yes, yes. And well, I would add, not everything has to be organic and clean from one day to another. Like
Yeah.
that depends on the circumstances of each person. Of course, we understand that. But as Murlene said, try to choose the healthiest as possible and everything like in your lifestyle. Thank
Yes.
you so much again, and see you everybody next
Thank
time.
you.
Bye.